This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Heart Mojo with Melinda Smith. And Melinda, how was your holiday?
It was a little crazy and different. How was yours?
It's so nice and quiet.
Quiet. Well, yeah, I mean, it was nice to have it be quiet, but we didn't really get to do what we normally do, and that made it a little different, right? But we
Absolutely.
managed, and hopefully next year we'll be good to go, right?
Absolutely.
Vaccines coming out, and wear your mask for a while though, guys. If you have the vaccine, it's not a free for all. You have to
You
still
got
wear
it.
your mask.
So
So
you have a
yeah,
special guest today.
I do. I do. Alan liked, right? Licked?
Licht.
Licked. Ah, there. Ah,
Yeah, now you
so
got
close.
it.
So close. So, funny story. We're friends well, we kind of met through another person, but we became friends on Facebook. And I was recently doing some cleaning. And lo and behold, I came across your CD, which I've probably had since 2012. So that was kind of crazy, but I'm welcoming you to the show now to
Thank you.
talk about the music industry and how you got into it and all the challenges that we're going through right now. So thank you for being on the show.
It's
I
my pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thank
Thank
you.
you. So, Alan, tell us a little bit about you, crazy boy from Cleveland,
Sure.
Ohio, whatever.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, I've been in the music business all my life, starting in 1973. And I started singing in nightclubs, which was great. I moved to California for about 15 years and performed there. I've come back and forth about 3 or 4 times, the life of a musician.
Hmm.
And then about 30 years ago, I started teaching pop voice and piano and enjoyed that. And at about the same time, I started songwriting. And it's been great for me. I'm very blessed to be doing what I love doing. And to bring you up to date, I'm teaching here at the house. I teach pop voice and piano, and I record about once or twice a week at the recording studio. I record a lot of my students. They do a lot of my original songs.
Hmm.
And it's been very challenging, obviously, this past year, but I'm still doing it. I'm still making it work.
That's great. So, what made you get into music? Like you said, you've been doing it your whole life. So,
Yeah, right out of high school, I was singing in the men's chorus at Heights High. And if not for that, I don't know if I would be doing it, because that really was my stepping stone for developing my interest. And right out of high school, I didn't go to college. I had a scholarship on voice, but I didn't take it. And I started singing in nightclubs right away. And I did the college thing many years later, but I never stopped. And I was always very driven. So although I always worked a day job because I had to eat,
hmm,
gigs, were plentiful back in the 70s, but still I like keeping busy. So that's basically it. My mother was a little musical, my father a little musical, but it wasn't really in the family, so to speak. It was back in the 1940s, my family was into the music heavily, but not my mom and dad.
hmm,
Yeah.
yeah. I did a little bit of singing out of college or out of high school myself,
Okay.
but it was never, I mean, I do it for fun. I still do a little glee group. I entertain people that
Oh.
way, but not in a band anymore. Not that I did go on to college to
Hmm.
I think my mom would have killed me if I didn't go on to college.
Well,
So,
sure. Yeah,
'cause
I
that's what
get that.
most parents wanted you to do, even in the 70s.
And
So
now,
that's what I did.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So
Cool.
tell us a little bit about Cleveland and how the music industry is here.
Well, it's very interesting. You would think, me being in California, that's where I would have most of my success. But the truth is, most of it came when I moved back to Cleveland about 10 years ago. Why that is, it was just the right things happening at the right time. I met a great co-producer and arranger at the record at Beechwood Studios, which
Hmm.
is not called Beechwood anymore. And my song started getting a lot of radio airplay, and everything really great has happened to me here in Cleveland. And not because it's Cleveland, it's just meeting the right people that were here in Cleveland. And I didn't have those people in California, though one might think that I would have. It
Different
was
types
just,
of challenges there. There are a lot of people in the industry there, right?
there are a lot of people in the industry there, and that is good. on one level. It's really good and it's bad because there's so much of it going on that you could easily get lost
Mhm.
in the whole fray of what's going on in Los Angeles and Orange County. And coming here, I think I was just able to focus with one person doing all my music and meeting the best of the best singers here in Cleveland, which really has been a blessing for me.
You know,
And
it's
we also have a lot of places here in Cleveland where you can perform. I mean, a
Mhm.
lot of people think, oh, this is Cleveland. Where are you going to be on stage? But some fantastic places, large and small.
That's true. Yeah, Cleveland does have some really good places, and it's unfortunate because those places now are, having a
Mhm.
difficult time. Like I was at Brothers Lounge for a year, and I don't know what they're doing, but not much. Beachland Ballroom, we can go
Mhm.
on, and it's really hurt. It's really hurt the musician, the performing musician. For me, although I miss not performing, I do have that outlet in the studio.
Mhm.
So I'm very fortunate that I'm not missing that much. It's still challenging. It's very challenging, especially, in fact, I'm doing a project now where I have had to bring 10 singers in, and they were very reluctant. So I had to space them out, one singer one day, and where I would have liked to have brought them all in at the same time, I couldn't do it.
Is it hard for people to interact that way, doing their pieces separately?
It isn't hard. They can do that. That's not difficult. What's difficult is just the discomfort that they feel coming into a recording studio, not knowing if they're going to get sick, if the
Mhm.
engineer might have something. But the recording process itself, fortunately, it can be done that way very, very easily. I would have preferred having them all in. It would have been more fun for everybody. But
Mhm.
it can be done because when people don't realize, when they listen to a record, they think that musicians get in the room, you'd play your song and you're done. But that's not how it works. You do one part, then you do another part, then another part, then another part. So it's not so bad
There's really
on that
been
front.
some interesting things on Zoom type events where you've had whole
Yes,
choirs get together and do their thing.
exactly. Yeah, in fact, I don't know what this gentleman's name is, but he's a choir director, and he literally did a piece, and I can't remember now, where there were about 1,000 voices on it. So each voice cut their part. They sent it into him, and he and his editors spliced it all together. I can't think of his name, but it was magnificent.
Hmm.
And that's how Shining Star, when we were talking about Shining Star here in
Mm.
Cleveland,
Mhm.
this is the first year we went all virtual with Shining Star. And now that was a challenge. That was tough.
Well, maybe you can explain to the people who are listening to this what Shining Star is.
Sure. Shining Star is a fundraiser talent show, singing talent show that is put on by Montefiore, and it's for their memory care. So their goal is to, of course, showcase local talent, but also to raise money for Alzheimer's and their home memory care program there at Montefiore. And this, I believe, is their fifth. We're going on fifth year, and this is the first year I was a judge. I've always been involved because Steve Walensky, who runs it, and Debbie Rothschild, I've known them working with their kids, and it was very challenging. Their artistic director this year was Connor O'Brien, and he did a great job. And honestly, I was up for the position. If I would have gotten the position, I don't think I would have been able to handle what Connor did from a technical point of view, because logistically, what he had to do with us listening to all the applicants and how he had to record it and do it was just mind boggling to put this all together, which he did. Not easy,
Yeah.
not easy.
So this was you judged each singer that
I
way. So
did.
have you completed it? Is it done? The money
It's
been
over for
raised?
this year. Yes, I think they raised $250,000, something
Wow.
Oh,
of that. Oh
wonderful.
yeah, yeah. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. I think approximately 150 to 200 kids auditioned. Then it's whittled down. Then we listened to all of them, and it's whittled down to 50, and then 20, and then the finals are with the final 10. And usually that's put on a Playhouse Square. But they still did a top. They ran it like The Voice was running
Hmm.
it through all it looked just like The Voice. So it was pretty brilliantly done. I still don't know how he did it, but he did it. He made it happen. I'm hoping this year it's in person again, because although it worked very well, there wasn't much coaching that I could do. It's not that
Right.
easy like this, just like a lesson. It's difficult. It's challenging.
So are you doing your lessons in your studio? Or are you doing them through Zoom?
Right. Well, I do both.
Okay.
Both. I've lost about 5 students because of all this, because when I have 2 Zoom students. The rest do come to the house. You're here in the area where I teach. So my singers are over there, they're away from me. And piano, I only have 1, so there isn't close contact. And Zoom, it works for a couple of students, but again, there is a delay. When somebody is singing, or if I'm playing and they're singing, there's a second delay. So
Mhm.
it's extremely challenging. And though we're doing it, they're really not getting the full benefit of it.
You know, it's interesting because one of our podcasters, our regular podcasters, he happens to be an acting coach, and he's
Okay.
been doing his classes on Zoom. And one of his programs, he had a couple of his young students on, and they were talking about the fact that of the delay and how difficult that was for them to adapt to it. And they said it took them probably a month or 2 of lessons before they finally got into the groove and realized that when he was interrupting them to tell them something, they had already done that.
Well, it is strange because I'll be playing a chord, I hear nothing, then he's singing while I'm on my next chord. So what I have to do is just keep going as if he's
Mhm.
singing. It's a very interesting
Yeah,
way to do it. But honestly, you adjust. I mean, I've adapted to it and I
interesting.
don't mind. I don't mind it. I really don't.
So do you think ultimately, as we move forward in
Mhm.
life, and like I said in the beginning, we're going to have vaccine, but we still will have have to wear masks for a little while. So it's going to take probably 6 months to a year before we start to roll over to
Well,
going
easily.
back to a normal, quote unquote.
Right.
So do you
Right.
think some people will want to stay in this format? I mean, do you think there's an ease to it for some people that they don't get by needing to show up and be in person?
Well, I do. I think for those that are far away, like I have one young lady who lives in Buffalo, New York, that I work with once in a while. So for her, it's very practical to do virtual.
Mhm.
If somebody lives on the far west side, sure. But for those that are closer, I think most of them, they want to be here. They want to be here. They want hands-on. They want the interaction. Also, oftentimes, if I'm not playing piano, I'll generate the music from a music track. That does not work so well virtually. If I'm playing a music track and you're trying to sing to it, that for whatever reason doesn't work so well. So you have to generate that track on your end, and some are just not willing to do it. But I do think that this is going to become, I think there's something very special about all this in its own right. And I'm thinking back on that choir director who put together this unbelievable recording with 1,000 people. Now, let's take that, for instance. It would be very difficult for him to get singers all around the world to do this project if
Mhm.
not this. Or if I want to teach somebody in California, this would be wonderful. So I think there's a real place for this. And I think what the pandemic has done, it's really thrust those of us like myself who didn't do this until the pandemic
Mhm.
into a different forum where it allows us to feel comfortable
Absolutely.
using a different format. Yeah.
So that was a big challenge, right, for you
For
to
me, it
move
was
forward.
really big. I went dragging and kicking.
Kicking.
I did. I did. I really did. I was saying, there's no way. I can't. And then everybody said, you've got to. You've just got to do it. And the same with Shining Star. When I started doing it, I'm listening to auditions just like we're talking now. It was fine, but it's like anything else that's new. You just have to be flexible and try to adapt to it the best you can. And the arts is probably the most difficult in that it's such a creative, hands-on, person-to-person experience. It's
Right.
not as if I were giving songwriting consultations like we're talking now, that would be fine. But when it comes to singing and me helping them sing better, learn how to breathe, it's challenging. There's an extra added challenge to it.
Well, there's something about being in person. I know people, let's just take a concert, for example. You hear a record or you hear something on a CD, and you hear their voice and it's great and it's wonderful, but there's nothing like seeing that person in person.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
So I
Right.
think for what you hear online, there's just something missing that you don't
There
get.
is. And a lot of my friends, they're doing virtual concerts with a PayPal tip jar.
Right.
That's the thing now. Now, I would feel very strange doing that. In fact, I wouldn't do it because it just seems odd to me to do a concert and to put a PayPal tip jar, although they're dying to perform. So I see why they're doing it. But that's the big rage now. That's
Yeah.
a big thing.
I didn't realize there was a PayPal tip jar.
Yeah.
Does
And
Charlie do that? Karen, doesn't Charlie
Yeah,
Wiener? Do you know Charlie Wiener?
The name's really familiar. I don't know
he's a
why. Wow.
comedian and musician and
Right.
book writer.
Oh,
Well, I know up in Saratoga Springs where my brother lives, and where there's, I seems like everybody's a musician up there. But that's what they've been doing because that's the only way to survive. And it's a way to keep their voices heard and recognized. They don't expect to make much on those tip jars, but
right.
they're hoping that, when this is over, they will get bookings because they've been active. Whereas some of the other performers who are just, I won't say just sitting back, they are sitting back. It's going to be harder for them to get up and going.
Yeah, I think that's true. And performers, they want to perform. That's what they want to do.
Right.
Do you feel that the younger the individual is, the quicker they adapted to being able to perform online? Because many of our young people actually get discovered by doing their videos at home and posting them online.
Well, they do. They do. And yeah, and that's an interesting thing that you bring up because it's so popular with these kids. They do their TikTok videos or Instagram videos, and it is easy for them. And there's a double-edged sword to all that because I have a lot of conversation with these young kids. They want to be a star. And they actually feel that the downside to that is they feel that this world will make them a star because they see Shawn Mendes was discovered that way, or Post Malone was discovered that way. But it's 1 in 100 million that get discovered that way. So what it, unfortunately, I feel it doesn't give them the incentive to do everything it takes to make it. They truly believe it's almost like a false sense of reality that if they post these things that they'll be discovered. And though anything can happen, I try to tell them you've got to get out there and work, sing everything you can with everybody you can. But it's a different mindset than when we were growing up.
They see it like being an influencer, right? So
They
people
do.
get
They
paid
do.
to influence certain areas or certain products. So I think that's how they're
Right.
looking at it, like that. I'm going to make money doing it that way
They
versus the
do.
work.
But versus the work, and the work, there are no shortcuts. And I have a lot of kids. I want to record them and release a song on them, and they feel, well, no, I'll make it big just doing a TikTok video. And it's frustrating for me because I know better.
Well,
It's,
and the internet has done this to so many. My son, he was very active in music in high school. He was in show choir, and my brother is a producer, and the two of them have written some songs together. My son has performed them, but the one thing that my son realized was just posting it out on the internet was not going to make him famous. And when he saw the hard work that went into it, he sat down and he said, music, sports, music, sports. Oh, it's going to be sports.
oh, okay.
Because you have to decide where you want to really put that energy. And so I think these young kids who are, putting out something on TikTok or YouTube, they are possibly one hit wonders, but they're not making the money of the old time one hit wonders.
That's correct. Yeah. And I just feel it's a false sense of reality. They just truly feel because a few people have made it that this is their way.
Right.
And it could be, anything is possible, but we all know that it takes a lot of hard work and we have to do everything that we need to do to make it. It's very hard. This business is an extremely difficult business to make it, whatever that means. It means something different to everyone.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, it's interesting because Cleveland really has a pretty rich history of music, and a lot of very well-known musicians have come out
It
of Cleveland.
does. That's true.
So it has a good starting point. Why do you think Cleveland has that starting point? When you were out in LA, you were out in California, and you didn't, I know there was probably more competition, but there's something about Cleveland. Is it being that it's in the Midwest and that it hits the general population that you have so many great musicians that come out of Cleveland?
I think so. Yeah, I do. I think that Cleveland musicians, the ones that I know, they're serious musicians. They they work hard to do what they have a good philosophy of what it takes. And Cleveland has always had a lot to offer without there's competition in Cleveland, of course, but LA is so spread out and Cleveland is compressed and compact. So if I'm playing at a place like Brothers Lounge, it's not unusual for another place down the street to hear me and to utilize my abilities. Or if you play at Johnny's downtown, because a friend of mine, not Mike Patrone, but Cliff Habian's a good jazz player friend of mine. He plays downtown and he plays all over. And it's in Nighttown, everybody knows one another.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, they're supportive of one another. You hear stories where people aren't supportive, but for the most part, they are. And there are cliques in Cleveland. The people I record with oftentimes won't record with other people or vice versa, which I don't get. But I just think it's just one of those cities. I think that's why we got the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, quite honestly. I just think it's almost like it's an entity that can't be described, but it's got it. We have a lot here, not as much as we used to have, especially with recording. Back in the
Mm-hmm.
70s and 80s, when Jim Brickman was writing and jingles and doing, there was
And
so
Eric
much
Carmen.
more.
Eric
And
Carmen.
Eric Carmen
Yep.
and Boku, and even when Michael Stanley was in his heyday, there was a lot more happening, but that's a lot's happening, just different stuff. A lot of indie stuff that I'm not involved with, indie pop, indie rock, but there's a lot of that in Cleveland, a lot of blues, a lot of other things. So this is definitely, there's a lot to offer.
Well, and it's interesting because so many people feel that their laptop is their studio and they can do everything on it. And some can get away with it.
Right.
Not everybody. And it's interesting when you hear the difference between what somebody has recorded off of their laptop and what's actually been done in the studio. You know, it can be mind-boggling. But again, it comes back to that center thing that so many of us want the easy way. And hey, I'm going to go get GarageBand. I'm going to learn it. I'm going to sing my heart's content. I'm going to post it out there. And, maybe I'll be able to get a gig at Brothers Lounge on Monday nights. It's not a popular night, but I can tell everybody I've played there. And
That's right.
And it's a stepping stone. But it isn't like when I was growing up and when you did recording, you were in an actual recording studio and you had professionals around you. And
Right.
if you weren't good, you didn't last very long.
No. And when I record, I'm in a professional recording studio primarily because I'm not very techie. So if I tried to do GarageBand, forget it. I wish I could do it. So I have to go that route. But thankfully, it really offers me so much, the interaction with those professionals. It's an amazing environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
and you don't, yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, finish.
No, go ahead. No. I was just
what I
going
was
to
going
say
to
that,
ask you is, what would be your favorite location in Cleveland before now? It doesn't have to be now. It could be 20, 30 years ago when you were here. What was a favorite place for you to visit and play, or where you played?
Okay. the Bluegrass. You don't
The
remember the
Bluegrass.
Bluegrass.
Oh my
You
goodness.
don't remember. You're too young to
No,
remember
no.
that.
I used to go. I met Sammy Davis Jr. at the Bluegrass,
Really?
at the pool.
Where was the
when we were kids.
Bluegrass?
It was by
Northfield?
Southgate.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's where my
Yeah.
in-laws used to go all the time.
Sure.
Okay.
It was probably the Bluegrass. The Virginian was my favorite place to play. That was at Shaker Square, yeah.
Mhm.
And Quinn's. There's a place called
Quinn's
Quinn's
in
in
Oh, I
Solon.
remember Quinn's.
Sure.
Oh, who was the guy that played there that used to be
It
at the
was
Bluegrass?
Scott Reed.
Scott Reed.
Yeah.
Oh my
Uh-huh.
goodness. Memories.
Yeah, but
Well, I always
yeah,
like going downtown to the theatrical. Do you
that's a
remember where
while
the
ago.
on Sixth?
Sure.
They always had their musicians, a lot of blues, but playing up in the center of the bar. The bar went around it.
Hmm.
It was very cool.
Right.
Great
Yeah, it was a
location.
great place for jazz. If you go back in history, Cleveland has had some of the greatest places. But those were the days of the showrooms. When I was
Right.
at the Virginia and the Bluegrass, the big singer back then was Jerry Tiffy and Scott Reed. But Jerry Tiffy was one of the first. And those were the days. That's all I can say.
Music Carnival. People would come
Oh
in
my
for the
gosh,
Music
sure,
Carnival. And they would
sure.
stay at the Bluegrass. That's how,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
all
that's right.
the big ones stayed at the Bluegrass
Yeah, they did. You're
back in
right.
the day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
I hate
was,
to age myself that way, but I wasn't old
well,
enough to go there, just so everybody knows. I wasn't old enough to go there. I was just in the pool area because my stepfather would go there with my mom and we'd hang out at the pool.
I get it. Well, think about all these kids. When I say kids, teenagers, the challenges they have today compared to what we had growing up. It's remarkable, the world that we live in today, how challenging it is for them. And maybe it was for us, but we didn't feel like it was so much. But they feel the pressure. They feel it. And it's disheartening for me to see these teenagers, many of whom are depressed, have
Mm.
depression issues. I would say 90%. And that's a shame.
So what do you think makes that difference? What do you think contributes to that?
Well, I just think that they don't have the, I don't think they have the hope, and they have, I'm sure the parenting is just as good as it was when we were growing up. I mean, quite honestly, my parents were never home. I was a latchkey kid, me and my
Me
twin
too.
sisters. Were you? So that wasn't the greatest. And I'm sure their parenting is fine, but I just think the world that we live in, with all the gun violence, the school violence, I just think it's a burden. I think we live in a
Maybe it's
society where there's so much
overload.
burden.
We have
But
information available all the time. Look, it shut off at 12 or 12:30, right? The nun came on or the priest came on, they did a prayer, they played the national anthem and we were
that's
done.
true.
And there
That's
was no more
true.
TV. And now it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every single channel. You hear everything. There's nothing that escapes a
You're
kid today.
absolutely right. Ever. It's even news. If you watch news loops constantly,
Mhm.
it's over and over and over. And we didn't have that on the news. We watched Walter Cronkite
Right.
and they would
Yep.
deliver the
Yeah.
news and we'd go play.
Yep.
That's it.
And we
But
trusted
now,
the news. We trusted the news.
yes,
Yeah.
there was a lot more trust. There was a lot more kindness. There was a lot more of everything. And it's rough. I mean, it's really rough for these kids. I think they start to pull out of it, but when you think about what these teenagers go through, the bullying and social media to them, if somebody puts them down, it's just really, and we thought it was difficult living with role models that, weren't approachable or
Mhm.
reachable for women, especially, and girls, but it's even worse today. I mean, the Kardashians to some of these girls, that's real.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not real. Interesting with the bully aspect. If you had a bully at school, you left them at school. So you went home at the end of the day, and even though you might have been bullied or on the
Very good.
bus or at the bus stop, you were done. It
But
never ends now
they follow you home on your phone or
on your
wherever.
social media.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but you're right. It is never ending. And I guess that's, there's a duality to Facebook. There are a lot of pros. You can connect with people you would like to or need to or
Are we
want to.
connected
Yeah,
technically through
yeah,
Facebook?
yeah, yeah.
There's
And
good to it, but there's bad as well. There really is.
there's a lot of bad. There are a lot of posts that I see. I unfollow a lot of people just because of the posts that I see. They're not bad posts, but I went to Starbucks and I just bought a latte. Nobody needs to know that. A lot of personal stuff, and it's a lot of it is just stuff that we don't need. We just
Right.
don't need it. Yeah.
Well, for me, anytime I was stressed, music was my outlet. So I would sing if I was mad at my mother, I'd find a song that had swear words in it because I wasn't allowed to swear.
That a
And I
girl.
could use those swear words to, be mad at my mom, and she couldn't yell at me because I was singing at the music. Or if I was sad, John Denver, Sunshine on My Shoulders, boy, that was one of my go-tos. I'd sit outside and listen to that. I'm not sure the kids have those types of outlets. Like, even though we have music, the music isn't that kind of a lot of the music, I should say, new music doesn't
It's
feel
not,
that.
it
It's
doesn't. I was
angry.
thinking, it's angry. Thank you. I was thinking about it the other day because as a writer, I'm always conflicted. Do I write what I feel and do I write what I like, or do I write what's current and what I think will be marketable? So I'm always trying to balance that. And I was just thinking about that the other day, that a lot of the music, Billie Eilish, it's very angry and very negative. Ariana Grande, every other word is a curse word.
Hmm.
And it's all negative and it's dark. And I get it, there's a place for darkness. I'm sure it's reflective of our culture, or we wouldn't have it.
Well,
It's
we
not like
started
this.
out with grunge, right? Grunge was that dark side.
Well, right. But when we grew up in the 70s and 80s, it was upbeat, it was fun, it was positive, it
Unless you
was
were Ozzy
uplifting.
Osbourne.
Well, unless you listen to that or Metallica, which I didn't, but
I
there's a
didn't
place
either.
for it. That wasn't my bag. I listened to
Hmm.
the Carpenters. That's the
Me
kind of,
too.
yeah.
That's
So
why we get along so well, because we like
that's
the same
right.
music.
It's true. It's true. So that bothers me too, that the music today is just it's just void of heart, in my opinion. Now others may
Mhm.
disagree, but I feel it's just void of goodness.
I think there was music that got the pain out. I mean, there were love songs where you lost your love, and that pain was in there, but it was in there in a different way, maybe more constructive in the end. I
Well,
mean,
I don't you think that we understood what the songs were about in
right.
in the 60s and 70s?
Absolutely.
And we memorized them. We could sing them. Um, now I'll hear a song and I like the sound of it. Okay. But I have no idea what the words are. And every once in a while I'll say
Right.
to my son, "Oh, why are they singing about, a hayloft?" And he'll look at me and go, "What are you talking about?" And I'll repeat it the way I heard it. And he'll
Mhm.
say, "No." And I'll say, "Well, what are the words?" And he'll admit to me, he has no idea, but he
Right.
knows it's an angry song, a happy song, or whatever. And, if you can't understand it, then personally, I'm not going to listen to it. I listen to
I'm the
music
same way.
that I can understand and I can feel it.
And that you can remember
Right.
and be able to sing. And that's a criteria for me when I write a song. People will ask me what makes a great song. And my answer to them is, if you can't sing a song back to me that you've heard, it's not a great song. Because there should be something about a song that's memorable that you can sing back. And any great song, whether it be Yesterday, Paul McCartney, or You Are the Sunshine of My Life, as soon as I say the title, the melody's in your head.
Well, and there
A
are
bit,
current
yeah.
songs like Happy,
Oh,
Okay, but
okay.
that's an exception.
but there are a few ones that make you feel good, that's easy to remember, and maybe they don't have a lot of words, because honestly it doesn't, but it still has that feeling. It's kind of like the do run 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 stuff,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Same idea.
Yeah, it's like John Legend, Alicia Keys. It's like neo soul, and meaning they bring in an element from the old school sound, and they create something that feels and sounds familiar.
Hmm.
And I like that. I like that a lot.
I'm hoping that, well, so I have one son, my older son, who's 23, who loves Kenny Loggins. I mean, he listened to all of this with me, and he likes that
Hmm.
music, 70s, 80s type music. And then the other one that went the opposite direction, I really don't understand why he likes that music at all.
Which direction is that, Melinda?
He's not songs that I would sit here and sing to. It's
Okay.
still, I mean, he likes a few things that I'm like, okay, I get that, but some of it, I don't get it at all. I don't see what. Now, mind you, if you think back to the 70s, I'm very sure that our parents or grandparents were like, what the heck are they listening to? Right?
They did. They
Elvis
did.
threw everybody in a tizzy. The Beatles, but there's still tone to it. There was still words to it. There was still meaning to it. It wasn't
Right.
screaming.
Right. And even something like Billie Eilish, and believe it or not, I actually like her, but it took me a long time. If when I first heard her, I didn't know what she was saying, and I had to look at the lyric, and they're very abstract.
Hmm.
It doesn't have much sense, but the sound, the production, I have
You
come to
appreciate that.
it. I appreciate it, and that she's different, but I couldn't sing to you any of her songs if my life depended on it.
Hmm.
So that's telling. That's so it's not, they're not going to be classics. They're not going to be
Right.
songs like John Legend's song All of Me. That
Hmm.
that will potentially be a classic
Hmm.
because it has that sound, still something from the past. It's
Right.
interesting. Yeah, it is.
I wonder if music today, that kind of abstract, some of it screaming, some of them where they go into these raves where they just throw each other around and knock each other around, is that representative of the young person's psyche today? Kind of what we were talking about with all these things going on, the depression, the this, the that. Is that a representation of where our young people are
Boy,
in
I
the world?
certainly hope not. I really hope that's not the case. The girls, teenage girls that I work with, I don't see anger. I just see sadness. I see they just don't have, there's just some stuff that's stirring in them. So I don't know if it's so much anger or the inability to be able to, I think they don't feel that they can achieve whatever their goals are. Everything feels overwhelming to them. So I don't think it's an anger thing so much, though I could be wrong in some cases, maybe it is. I just think it's a little bit of a, pardon me, a hopelessness. And I'm not sure where it all comes from, but it's
So
a problem.
do you think, I hate to use Janis Joplin because she died from a drug overdose, but
She was angry, I'm sure.
she was angry and she was depressed, but
Right.
she made outstanding music. It wasn't the same thing that I'm talking about today. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I
because,
don't
yeah,
understand why we have that variance.
well, she came up in this counter pop culture. It was the Vietnam era.
Mhm.
And there was this, if you think of Woodstock, it was that anger that raged towards the war in politics. So that's what was coming out. I think it was that type of anger as opposed to a personal, internalized anger. Though, of course, she was depressed. And I'm sure the whole drug scene fed into a lot of the problems with her, or Jimi Hendrix,
Mhm.
or Jim Morrison, and we could go on and on.
Mhm.
But I think their anger was different than when I listened to her, you think about Nirvana. Now that I don't like them because that's really, to me, that's the epitome of sadness. And that's hard. I don't know if you've heard Nirvana or,
Mhm.
but I think he was a pretty angry guy,
Mhm.
sad and angry. So I'm hoping that these kids grow out of it, and that yeah, I don't know if the opportunity, even with all these shows, what's happened at the beginning when The Voice and American Idol was first on, it was an opportunity. But now when these kids, because a lot of my kids audition for these things,
Mhm.
there's 20,000 kids auditioning. So when they see this, back in the day when I was singing, there were 10, a handful of us that did this.
Mhm.
Now I would say 80% of all the teenage girls out there can sing pretty darn well. Surprisingly, there is a lot of talent. And I don't know if that's because there are a lot of forums for them to show their talent, or there are just more talented kids today. So I'm not sure about that one.
Well, the bar is so high too. I've been watching The Voice since it started,
Me too.
and the level of talent
Oh
where
my
they're at
gosh. I
now is
know.
nothing compared to where they started. Nothing.
It's true.
And I think maybe we have more of an opportunity to, when we were growing up, like I said, I sang through school. My first solo was Hey, Hey, We're the Monkeys. That was my first solo in first
I
grade.
don't know if I'd admit that, but okay.
That's okay. And then Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. That's another one. But, I loved doing it. And when I got out, I did it for fun. But I didn't look at it as this is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I was going on
Right.
college. And it's not because I didn't love music. I've always loved music. Singing has been an outlet for me. But I think the difference is these kids see fame and fortune, and they're practicing, they're doing all the things we just talked about, and thinking, I'm going to get on YouTube, I'm going to be famous, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. There's more opportunity. You see it with all the different shows. We didn't have that.
True. No, we didn't. And it's interesting because some of these kids, we were talking about Sandy Gross. Well, her daughter,
Mhm.
Ariel, who I've not only worked with, she's recorded for me. She's unbelievable. On a scale of 1 to 10, she's a 9. And if anybody could make it, she's one of them, but
Mhm.
she's not really pursuing it. And I see a lot of this where the best singers are doing less work than the singers that aren't as
As good.
accomplished or
Mhm.
talented or gifted. But Ariel, for instance, is unbelievable vocalist. You wouldn't believe it if you heard her, honestly.
And I've known her whole life.
That's so funny.
Her whole life. Sandy, if you're watching this, you know what he just said. She has to start, getting online.
Oh,
and doing
Sandy
this.
knows. Oh, she knows what I think about Ariel.
Now
Yeah,
Ariel
it's
has to know it,
oh,
right? She has to
she
know it.
does. I mean, she really does because she's very special. There's a lot of talent out there, though. It amazes me. The people that come through my door, it truly amazes me.
So do you think, just popping back for a minute with the war thing
Sure.
with Janis Joplin and
Yeah.
all the political pieces, we are in a major political upheaval in our country now. I mean,
Yeah,
major
we are.
in so many ways. Back to the same things we went through actually in the 60s, right? Into the
Mhm.
70s. So how do you see that affecting music today? Like, do you think we're going to see, we've already talked about kind of the screaming nonsensical things. For us, it doesn't make sense anyway. Will we see maybe a throwback a little bit
I'm
to,
hoping. I'm hoping. I've been thinking about this, and what I'm hoping is that because things are cyclical, and when
Mhm.
things become extremely turbulent, oftentimes people have this need for a gentler way of life, a gentler sound, the outlet, and you see it in some songs. So, with the pandemic, you hear people writing these nice, sweet, gentle
Mhm.
songs. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure because the artists that are out there today aren't really doing that type of music.
Mhm.
And I do. When I write, my music that I put out is very synonymous with music of the 80s, 90s. It's because I enjoy it and I think it's needed. I
Mhm.
think we need this kind of music. But I don't see that happening again. But I hope I'm wrong for many reasons. Selfishly, because my songs will do better if that comes back,
Mhm.
and because we need it. We just need that. And I think because I write that type of music and I come from that era, when I send my songs to a licensing company, when they accept it into their library to place in a movie or a TV show, I think they do it because I'm probably one of the few people that write that kind of music. They're probably getting a lot of music from rock guitar players and heavier type of songs. So I don't know. To get back to your question, I don't see that happening for a while, but I hope it does.
You
I really do.
mentioned licensing, and
Sure.
so many of these young people who are out there producing their own music, or they're finding a small production company. I'm hearing that most of them are not licensing because they want to get their music out. They want everybody to hear it and play it. Um, if you're licensed, I know you're only getting pennies for every time it's played. It takes a long time to make any money on it. Do you, how important do you think licensing is?
I think it's hugely important because there are only a few ways that an artist can make money. Way number one is to get radio airplay. Now that's where you make pennies on the dollar. You don't make
Yeah.
a lot of money because the Wave, Mark Ribbons was playing 10 of my songs for 2 to 3 years straight, and I didn't make much money. So the radio airplay, this one of the best ways to make money is through licensing. The reason being is you make pennies if they use your song, let's say in a TV show, and they play it for 5 seconds, like they did with one of my songs, and it generated $1,000. But let's take that same song, if it were selected to be a theme song for the movie, then it could have generated $10,000 or 20 or whatever. And the nice thing about licensing, just when a song is used once for licensing, it can be used twice, 3 times, 4 times. There isn't a limit, and it doesn't prohibit me from sending it to, because the other thing I do is I try to send my songs to well-known artists to get it covered by them.
Got it.
And I've done it a couple of times. It's very hard, nearly impossible to get somebody famous to record your song. So those are 3 ways. And of course, selling your product at your venues, at your performing. That's another way to do well if you have a good following.
Mhm.
But bands do that, and you can make money doing that. But I find licensing to be a real fantastic way to make money and to get your songs heard.
Don't you feel that, I mean, I hate to go back to Eric, but Eric Carmen has done a lot of licensing with his songs, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
been phenomenal for him. I mean, he hasn't been out and done a lot of gigs for many years, right? But you still hear his music.
Well, not only, yeah, in fact, there was a commercial where we heard All By Myself. I forgot what the commercial was, but that song, when it's used in a commercial, I mean, he's making $10,000 a shot, whether it's 5 seconds or 3 minutes. And his residuals, when you have a #1 hit song, let's take All By Myself,
Mm-hmm,
you're a millionaire, period,
mm-hmm,
because you're making all that money. And then Celine Dion will cover it.
right.
Then you're going to make a couple more million, because Celine doesn't make money from the song except for the product that she sells, CDs.
Mm-hmm.
The writer is the one who makes all the money. The artist does not really make all that much. But yeah, if you have a song like that, then not just with licensing, but yeah, anybody who records that song is going to pay a licensing fee. Like if my cover album that you have, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't that much. It only cost me about $100 a song to be able to use them on my CD. But the more CDs you make, the more it costs you to license a song.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the idea is to get a hit song, and then that's it. That's what I do this for, really, with
Mm-hmm.
the hopes of that happening. Oh, I've only got 20 more years, and that's it. I'm done.
I
And
love it.
oh
Well,
God,
so that's really the challenge. Going back to our whole premise is always about getting through challenges, but that's a challenge for the young artist coming up is
very much.
if you're going to be a writer and you want to get your music out, license it and see what you can build from that.
License it and record and do your concerts. There's a young lady I met at the studio. Her name is Erin Coburn. She's 19 years old, and she's here in town for a month. And this girl is so driven. She's doing concerts virtually. She's recording. She's learning how to be an engineer. There's no stopping this girl, but it's the drive, and
Mhm.
that's the key. You just, in anything we do, we have to be driven, and we can't give up, because the old saying is, the day we give up, the next day we would have made it. So that's why for me, there hasn't been any giving up. But it's a challenge nowadays. And
Absolutely.
like any challenges, World War II was a challenge for people.
Mhm.
You just have to keep moving, taking steps through it every single day. Do whatever you can do, and just wait for tomorrow and keep doing it. It's all we can do.
I keep hoping that out of all of the challenges with the political environment, the social environment,
Mhm.
the pandemic on top of everything else, that maybe out of that will come a new form that is nicer, gentler music instead of this angry stuff. That's my hope, that in the end they're going to take all the things that happened here and turn it into something hopeful and moving forward, and not, oh, woe is me,
I hope
negative,
you're right,
depressive music.
because there is so much anger and divisiveness in our country now. I've never seen it like this. We thought the 60s were bad.
Right.
And what's going on now is it's really rough. It's really rough. And I can see where depression could sit in with these young kids. This is what when you think about it, when they were kids, they're growing up with iPhones. They're growing up seeing
Mhm.
everything We
Right.
were protected from all that. What the worst thing, the first bad thing I saw was the Kennedy assassination that
True.
really affected me.
Hey,
And
we grew up believing we could hide under our desk for nuclear war,
Yeah.
right?
you mean we can't?
No, amazingly, we
Oh,
can't.
shoot, Melinda.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something, but we're going to all get through it because we have no choice.
Right.
We have one another, and we will all get through it.
So before we close, and I so appreciate you being on today. We talked
Oh,
about
it's
a
my
lot of different
pleasure.
things, but it was fun. It's something a little different, right, Karen?
Yeah.
We haven't done
Absolutely.
that. Give words of advice as somebody who's been out in the industry to hit these challenges that are coming on. What would you suggest to somebody listening, no matter how old they are?
Sure. I would say don't lose your dreams. Just take a deep breath, have a plan, have something that you do every day toward your goal, whatever it might be. I get on the computer and I send my songs out by email via MP3. So whatever it is you do, just have a little bit of a plan and just do a little bit every day. You just have to, that's how we have to do things now. And eventually, if you continue to believe, I firmly believe, I know it's happened in my life, success will find you, but you have to keep headed in that direction and keep working toward it. But I believe success will find anybody who wants it bad enough.
And I think you have to define what that success means to you.
Right.
Absolutely.
Success might not be, the big
Right.
record deal. It may be
No.
locally being known and be happy with that. So I
And
think
for
you have
me,
to
it's,
figure that.
yeah, it's the process for me. And it's the process of me helping these young artists having records on the radio. There's nothing that thrills me more to have a 19-year-old artist who's never done anything and she can hear herself on the radio. So
Absolutely.
that's my blessing, the process. It's all about the process.
Very good. Well, thank you, Alan, for being on. I really appreciate it. Karen, do you have anything else for closing?
No, I think this was absolutely something that we needed today.
Thank you.
As we end the year and go into a new year. Um, and exactly what you said. If this is something you want to do, work at it. Keep going forward. Um, don't let people tell you you can't do it. But Melinda, you're right. We each have a different value on success and achievement. And it doesn't mean that we all have to have a Grammy. Uh,
No,
that Grammy could be having a steady job and having people come out and hear us in Cleveland, Ohio. So thank you so much.
absolutely.
So,
It's
Alan,
my
is there
pleasure.
anything you want to put out if somebody's listening and they want to talk to you and maybe have you help them with their kids and their music? How do they reach you?
I would love to hear from anybody out there that would like some help, advice. I will talk to anybody. There's no charge, regardless if you want to learn to sing or play piano or you want just consultation or just to talk about the business. You can call me. Is it okay to give my phone number?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Whatever you
Okay,
want to
good.
do.
You can call me at 216-904-9348, or you're welcome to email me at musicmanlicht, that's Licht, at yahoo.com. And I would love to talk to anyone out there who is interested in pursuing a career in music.
And you have a Facebook page, right?
I do. You can just type in Allan Licht and my Facebook page and my website will come right up.
Awesome.
That's wonderful.
Thank you again. I think music is the appropriate way to end our year. Hopefully, when someone gets off this podcast, they're going to go find their favorite song and listen to it. I challenge you to do that so that as you move forward into the next year, you move in with peace and love and enjoyment because we all
Amen to
need that.
that. Thank you both so much
Thank
and
you.
Happy New
You.
Year.
Happy New Year,
Take
everybody.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.